Welcome, everyone, to the Predictive Playbook Sports Betting Show for Friday, August the 12th, 2022. I'm your host, John Ryan, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Bobby Krivitsky, and the Iceman, Jesse Schule. Jesse Schule is in a very much different time zone than he used to be, but he's nice enough to join us today. You'll know Jesse. If you don't know him, you should get to know him because he's one of the best professional sports bettors I have known for many, many years. Bobby Krivitsky is a special guest. I was on his show last night, and he's one of the best hosts, if not the best host, in my opinion, on the
Venmo's on the way, John.
Makes it so easy for me to just talk and have fun. But Bobby covers the Celtics for SI and is a host, like I said, on the SportsMap radio. So welcome to the show, guys. I didn't notice. I guess there's a couple of big series in Major League Baseball going on this weekend. Maybe just a couple.
I guess you could say that. There's some serious playoff implications on the line this weekend.
Yeah, and it's only August, which makes it even the more cool because you usually don't get these playoff atmosphere type of situations in this part of August. It's usually in September when the showdowns really happen. But let's talk about those Red Sox who really don't have any realistic chance to make the playoffs. They're 3 games under 500 coming into this matchup, but no better opponent on the planet to get them playing their absolute best than the New York Yankees, who have been a mystery. I must admit, I did say that the Yankees would be a fade from July for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I didn't think it was going to keep going, and my models keep playing against them. Not every day, but consistently. They're just nowhere close to being on the Yankees. They're 15-20, guys, over the last 35 games. You know what the Dodgers record is over the last 35 games?
It feels like it's 35-0. It's not, but they're that red hot.
30-5 versus 15-20. It sounds like we're talking about the Washington Nationals and the New York Mets, 2 complete opposite teams. I think the bullpen is in trouble with the Yankees, and they need a solid bullpen to make a playoff run, as we all know. They're allowing 0.7 more runs per game out of the pen. And keep in mind, they're coming in the game with a little more than 3 innings left in the game, sometimes less than that, and they're still giving up 1.8 runs per game right now since July 1. And the over has also been winning bets with the Yankees at about a 70% clip since July 1, reflecting that poor pitching. So in this matchup, we basically have a pick'em situation with the New York Yankees, and I am willing to bet that the betting public is enthusiastic in betting the New York Yankees because, after all, they're still in first place. They're still 30 games over 500, and they're still the Yankees. The Red Sox 3 games under 500. They have nothing to play for. I'm backing the Red Sox in this game, and I'll let you guys break it down first. But I have a really, really pretty cool angle that I just pulled up before we went on the show, and I'll share that later in the breakdown. But let's start with Bobby here and see what he's got in this matchup for us.
Sure. So, John, first off, I think that the Red Sox have to be concerned. There's a legitimate possibility, even with the Yankees struggling, having their 22-25 in their last 47 outings, 2-8 in their last 10 games. At the same time, I think the possibility of the Pinstripes coming into Fenway Park and pulling off a sweep these next 3 games is legitimately on the table. This outing tonight with Nathan Eovaldi on the bump for Boston might be the best chance the Red Sox have in this series. We're going to talk about it as a whole. We're going to talk about the Yankees' struggles in just a second here. But just focusing on tonight, you have Nathan Eovaldi on the mound, most reliable starter the Red Sox have. And yet in his last 3 outings against the Yankees, he's given up 13 runs, 18 hits, and lasted only 12 innings. Boston 1-2 in that stretch. And then on the other side, you have Diego Germán, who, if you just look at his numbers in total, they're not great, but that's misleading because he hasn't made that many starts and seems to be getting better with each one. For example, he's gone 5 innings in his last 2 outings, 2 runs the first time, then only 1 run. So it feels like he's getting stronger as he ramps up and takes the mound more and more. So tonight, you can look on DraftKings, for instance, and find the Yankees at -1.5 or +135. And the over for this game is set at 9 runs and -115. I like both of those figures.
I definitely like the overlook because of the Yankees' troubles in the bullpen. Jesse Schule, do you want to hear my angle so that you can ask me questions about it first, or do you want to do the breakdown, then I'll do the angle?
You know what? I'm pretty familiar with your angle, I believe. So let me just contribute a little bit
Okay.
to this. And I think I'm feeling what Bobby's saying. Eovaldi gives the Red Sox the best shot at this game, but the line doesn't really interest me that much. I mean, at close to a pick 'em, no matter how much the Yankees are struggling, it's hard to get me interested in backing a Boston team that still lost 6 of their last 8. This is a game that I'm going to approach as I'd like to watch it, but I'm probably not going to be placing a bet on it.
Well, I'm going to be on the Red Sox. I think Bobby's got the point that this is the one game that they have the best chance to win, and it is only lined at pick'em, and the betting flows are definitely, the public is definitely on the Yankees, and they may be right. In terms of this angle, though, teams like the Yankees that have outscored their opponents by 200 or more runs, that means they basically have steamrolled the majority of their opponents. And they've been at 200. They're at 203 right now, but they've been at 200 for a while, even during this losing streak. And a team that has lost at least 7 of their last 10 games. The Yankees have lost 8 of their last 10 games. Just those two set of parameters put the Yankees into a 1-6 situation on the money line that has averaged a minus 170 and an ROI of, it's just amazing, minus 92% ROI in this situation. Now, the over Bobby likes and I like, it's a perfect 7-0 in this situation. So if anything, I think you get through that first inning with no runs being scored, you take a look at that in-game total on the over, which should be at 8.5 if that should happen, and try betting it that way. But I do like the over quite a bit, and I think this is the game. If the Red Sox are going to win one of them, it's going to be this one. That's pretty good stuff, though, Jesse, don't you think?
It seems so counterintuitive to me that betting against a team because they've scored so many runs. I know you've been quite successful with it. However, like I say, that price is really bothering me, though. I mean, part of the reason why that angle is so successful is because a team like the Yankees is going to be overrated at this stage. But given their current losing streak, that number has come down. I mean, if this game was in the middle of July, the Yankees might be a buck 80 favorite right now. But at close to a pick'em, it seems like you're losing a lot of value to me.
And I agree with your point. The Yankees are bottoming. I don't think it's going to. They're not going to go 15-20 over the next 35 games again. I would be absolutely shocked if that happened. But at the same time, the trend has been so negative in their games that you're right. The 200 or more runs per game is reflected in the market overpricing the Yankees, and that's what brings the value out. So just doing that simple query by itself will tell you the teams that are overvalued. Now, it's not a perfect science, obviously, because you have the Los Angeles Dodgers, who were over 150 runs more than their opponent in July. And, if you did the Yankees and the Dodgers, you would have made money, but you gave a lot back with the Dodgers because they have just kicked everybody's rear end like I've never seen. It's just like they're never going to lose again. 9-0 in August, and the Mets are 8-2. Phillies are 8-2. Cardinals are 9-1, 8-1.
Yeah, and Jesse, even to add to your point about this basically being a pick'em and that being a reason to stay off it, 17 of New York's last 25 losses were within 2 runs. So, John, you brought up the bullpen. That speaks to that. Granted, the starters haven't been exactly sterling either as of late, but they've got injuries to critical setup men like Chad Green and Michael King. Clay Holmes has given up 10 runs in his last 9 1/3 innings. So that bullpen is really at the root, I would say, of why the Yankees, all of a sudden, as reliable as it once was, are starting to lose a lot of close games.
I can't agree more. Yeah, the Yankees will win the division. They're 10 games ahead of Toronto despite these losing ways, 12 games over Tampa Bay. One quick question that we didn't cover before we went on the air. Do you think Baltimore makes the playoffs? My answer is yes.
I
What do
love
you
that
think?
answer. I think it's more fun, but I don't see them ultimately getting in. I have more faith in teams like the Rays, like the Blue Jays, for instance. So I side with them. The Mariners obviously went out and got Luis Castillo at the deadline. So I just have more confidence in those clubs as opposed to Baltimore, who is still playing well, and it would be a fun story, but they were sellers at the deadline.
Good stuff. Jesse, do you think they make it?
Well, I like what you're saying, Bobby, but betting against the Orioles, there's been a lot of people lining up to do it, and it hasn't worked out so far. So don't sign me up to bet against them at this point. I know a colleague of mine and John's, Tony Mejia, he famously tweeted at the All-Star break that the Orioles are due to suffer regression in the second half, and he's tempted to fade them in every game moving forward. And I hit him back and I said, I might be tempted to take the Orioles plus 1.5 in every game moving forward, and so far that's looking pretty good.
Yep.
And again, as far as the Orioles go, they just don't seem to be getting the respect they deserve, given how well they've played over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, and everybody remembers the terrible years that they had. I remember one stat we did on the show where it took 100, I think it was 123 games for the Orioles to reach 40 wins, and then this year they did it in the fastest that they have done in, I think, in the last 10 years, or at least since that 2017-18 season. But anyway, I think they're going to be in it all the way down the stretch, and one reason is that they do have that bullpen. They have the fifth best bullpen whip in all of baseball, and that really is what the Yankees need, and that is the difference between those two teams. Let's move over to the National League now. And as you can tell, I'm sitting at Citi Field. I can't wait for this series to start, to be honest. Two teams will play each other 7 times in their next 10 games. The second series will be at Philadelphia starting next Thursday in a 4-game set. Tonight is a 3-game series beginning tonight. And it's the Philadelphia Phillies and the New York Mets. The Phillies are 10.5 games behind them, but they are scorching hot, 8-2 of the last 10, and one of the best record teams since the firing of Joe Girardi. I think that's a little coincidental, but this Thompson guy really has them clicking. The chemistry is just awesome. Every time they take the field, you can feel it even through the TV that they just think they're going to win. And even last night, being up or losing 3-0, they had the bases loaded in the ninth with no outs. And they also have the most wins after trailing in the 7th inning. So even though they're 10.5 games behind the Mets, I wouldn't want to be an opposing team in that first round playoff in a 5-game series with Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Gibson, who is now pitching really well. He had a perfect game going through 7 innings in his second to last start. Ranger Suarez, who goes tonight, he's been lights out the last 3 or 4 starts. And the new guy, Thor, Noah Syndergaard, who pitched very well against Alcantara the other day in Game 2 of that series in the Marlins. So for tonight, let's start with Bobby and see. Do you think the Phillies could actually win this series and take 2 out of 3?
Oh, absolutely. I don't see how you could dismiss that notion given that lineup, just how lethal it is. It's why, like you said, even the other night, it's 3-0, but it only takes a brief rally with those bats to get into it. And then all of a sudden someone puts one over the stands and it's a tie game. They're leading. It's a 1-run game, whatever have you. With that lineup, they're always going to be threatening. Really, no matter how steep the gap is, it's something they're capable of overcoming. You talked about how effective their starting pitching is, adding Thor at the deadline. So I really like this Phillies team. And John, I do think I'll start with the point about the transition from Joe Girardi. I think that confidence, personal relationships, all of that stuff can manifest itself on the field. And so I don't think it's entirely or purely coincidental that they started to play better. I think part of the dynamic there from a human element changed after they got rid of Joe Girardi. And then Dombrowski being aggressive at the deadline, which that's his MO. That's what he's going to do offseason or trade deadline. I think that gives a team confidence when you're not winning your division, you're competing for a spot in the wild card and don't have a firm grasp of one, and your general manager goes out and invests in the club and gets you support in the form of, most notably, Noah Syndergaard. I think that's another move that sparks confidence and helps a team on the field.
Well said. I completely agree. I think another big acquisition was center fielder Marsh, who, in my opinion, I think he's the best center fielder in the National League defensively. The stick, if you're the best defensively in center field, which is one of the key positions up the middle, you want to be strong at second base, shortstop, catcher, obviously, in center field. You have those, top three players in your league, you're probably going to win a ton of games, and it's going to be led by the defense. So the fact that the Phillies really didn't have a center fielder, Jesse, I mean, they didn't really have a guy that played center field for a career. And then to land arguably the best guy, we've seen them win games now with some really good, just high quality defensive outs instead of it being an error or instead of being a base hit. So I think Bobby's right, and that's what's made the chemistry so good. But let me ask you, Jesse, how far do you think the Phillies could go if they make the playoffs? And do you think the Mets will be in the World Series?
Geez, tough questions. We did have this discussion before, betting the Phillies as opposed to trying to bet them to come back and compete for the division. Perhaps getting further in the playoffs would be a better bet, but I'm just not as much of a Phillies fan as you are. You mentioned the how well they've been playing, and their starting pitching lineup looks formidable. But you got to keep in mind that over the next 3 games, they're going to face Scherzer, DeGrom, and Bassett. That looks pretty scary to me. I think if you're betting the Phillies in this series, you better be getting them plus 1.5.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. It's going to be interesting because the Phillies have their version of that, and arguably it's not as good as what the Mets have. DeGrom looked incredible in the last start, but he is hittable. And this Phillies team is a fastball loving team, and as a result, they do strike out a little bit more than average, but offensively, they're a top 5 run producer. And like Bobby said, any given inning, doesn't matter if it's the 9th, the 1st, the 3rd, they get guys on, and they're now hitting more and more opposite field. And I'll be interested to watch that tonight, because if they do that against Scherzer, I think that's going to work. If you set yourself up to hit opposite field, the reason you want to do that for the viewers out there is that it keeps your bat in the strike zone longer, so that when Scherzer throws that breaking pitch in the curve, your bat is still able to at least foul it off instead of missing it completely and striking out. And we've seen it with Scherzer. The more foul balls during at bat, he sometimes his competitive nature gets the best of him, and then
good in the bad of Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad Max. That's right. But it's just going to be a fun series to watch through and through. I wish the Red Sox were in playoff contention more realistically instead of just mathematically, because that would add, you'd be switching back and forth like crazy. At least I would be. Well, I guess that's it for Major League Baseball. Let's move over to the NFL now. We have the Browns and the Jaguars. This game doesn't need much introduction at all because of all the headlines surrounding the Browns. The Jaguars played miserably bad last week in Las Vegas. A game, I guess, in hindsight, they were supposed to lose because Las Vegas has the new coach and they wanted to get out to a new fresh start with a big win, and they got it. But there's a lot of angles here analytically working against the Jaguars, but I don't know if I can bet the Browns. But let's see what Bobby has to say about this matchup and the players that are on the field, and one of which I don't know why he is on the field.
Yeah, John, first off, I want to say I love that you've dismissed the existence of Doug Peterson, also a new head coach down there in Duval. And I'll put out this warning to start that when it comes to preseason football, I stay away from it. It's too much of a crapshoot in the second half. So if anything, if you want to throw some money on a game, then I would say, one, be smart about how much you're putting on it, of course. And secondly, the first half of an outing seems wiser to me than betting on an entire game when the fourth stringers start to take over and you have no idea how it's going to unfold. So what I'm giving you here is what I'm interested to watch. Deshaun Watson, he shouldn't be allowed to play in the preseason either, but he is, and he's going to do so, at least as of now. That's the plan for Cleveland. But I'm more interested to see what happens when he goes out, because I think he's going to be suspended for, at a minimum, the entire season when it's all said and done on that front. So how does Jacoby Brissett look? And do they ultimately decide to go out and get Jimmy Garoppolo? That's not obviously tonight is going to be a small percentage of that equation in what they do, but I think they should. If you're Garoppolo, of course, you'd rather find a potential long-term home as opposed to Cleveland, but he's in a situation where he's getting ready to move out of San Francisco, so he only has so much say in where he ends up, especially because it's the NFL, not the NBA. And then last year, Kevin Stefanski, he didn't play many of his starters in either of the first two preseason games the Browns participated in, and they've got joint practices coming up with the Eagles next week. So it's really just the quarterback, and more specifically Jacoby Brissett, how he fares, that I'm curious to see. But on the Jacksonville side of it, it's Doug Peterson's second preseason game now. Do they look better after they were pretty shaky in the Hall of Fame game? They overpaid Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, but their receiver room does get better as a result of it. Does Travis Etienne suit up tonight, and how much explosion does he get? Even if he doesn't, I'm a big Snoop Connor fan. I don't know how good he's going to be at the next level, but at Ole Miss, he was a treat to watch because he's so fast and explosive and hard to corral. And then, of course, the number one pick in the draft is going to be out there in Trayvon Walker. Devin Lloyd, another first-round selection from Jacksonville. And I thought they had a pretty good draft overall, so I'm even excited to see Chad Muma, a third-round pick, an off-ball linebacker from Wyoming. So there's a lot, I would say, more than anything, on the Jacksonville defensive side that I'm curious to check out tonight in that matchup.
That's great stuff, Bobby. I forgot about the excellent draft that Jacksonville had, to be honest. I knew they did well. I thought the Giants did well, and the Eagles did well, with that move to get Brown. Jesse, what do you think the play should be on this game? And by all means, you can pass. But I'm kind of leaning to what Bobby was saying about taking the Browns first half on the point spread and just being happy with that.
No, I mean, I like everything that Bobby said. One area that I would potentially disagree, I mean, I'm not an expert in legal matters with NFL suspensions, but you mentioned that you feel that Deshaun Watson's going to be suspended for at least the season. The fact that they're starting him tonight indicates to me that they don't feel he's going to be gone for the entire season. And it seems like they feel he needs to get some snaps, some reps with the first team offense. And I don't see the value in playing Deshaun Watson if you're going to play him behind third string offensive linemen and have him throwing to third string wide receivers. And then the same goes when you pull him and you put in Jacoby Brissett, who's going to have to be your week one starting quarterback at this point. He's going to need reps with those first stringers. So is that going to lead the Browns playing their starters more than the Jaguars tonight? I believe that's what it means. And given that, and also the Doug Peterson doesn't have a great track record winning preseason games. Stefanski did do well last year in the preseason. I'd lean on the Browns here for those reasons.
Yeah, it's good stuff. That is the $1 million question with the player personnel packages that you'll see out in the field, but it will be fun to watch that Jacksonville defense and see what they're all about. They're going to be faster than fast if you look at those guys along the line. And I did an interesting thing research-wise. It seems to be a general conception in the media outlets that nobody can throw the deep ball anymore. And, of course, we all know that a player at the NFL level probably at minimum can launch a ball 70 yards if there's nobody in front of them. So in looking at the blitz percentages over the last 3 years, the percentage of blitzes has gone down significantly. It's just not an anomaly, in my opinion. The problem for the quarterback, and this includes guys like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and the veterans, is that there might be 7 or 8 guys in the box. 4 are going to come. You don't know which 4, because now you have defensive ends that are maybe just slightly bigger than a linebacker, but much, much quicker than what used to be a 280, 300-pound defensive end. And they can drop back in coverage and cover a tight end. So the problem has been that they don't know where it's coming from, and to recognize that and then throw a long ball and not be able to look and assess where the safeties are. In fact, last year marked a huge increase in the number of cover 2 schemes that were shown pre-snap. And the defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, whose name escapes me, it was like Fogio or something like that.
So the head coach was Vic Fangio recently.
Fangio, that's it. Thank you very much, Bobby. Sometimes my memory of names is terrible. However, I give this guy credit for this because he was the one that came up with the schemes that you'd show something pre-snap, but it was never what really happened. They might show blitz, but then they don't bring it. They might show cover 2, but it's not cover 2. And that, obviously, he had great defenses in it, and it worked very, very well. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking with this whole evolution of the game, that defenses are not caving in either. They're just as aggressive as they used to be. It's just in a different light to defend those passes. It's much better to get a dump pass and then have closing speed to tackle the guys, and I think that's what Jacksonville will be very good at doing this year. So I don't think they're going to get blown out of many games. But, Doug Peterson, he had the magic wand there in Philadelphia in 2018, that's for sure. And everything just fell into place, and they remained healthy. So real quick with the time we have left, let's just take a look at the Jets and the Eagles. And, the Eagles don't have practices, essentially. They don't. They put on the pads. It's basically walkthroughs, and it's to make sure that nobody gets hurt. We already know Tampa Bay, and I didn't know this, but Jesse told me this, that they lost their second center now. And for my purposes, Jesse, was that the Notre Dame kid that they lost?
I believe
that's
so, yeah.
huge. Because now, wow. That's big news. I don't know if that ties into Tom Brady's personal departure. That nobody knows why he left, and I guess it just makes you go, I wonder what's going on with that. But in this Eagles team, Jalen Hurts has been bashed for not being able to throw the long ball, and I don't think he's going to have to in this offense. I think he has just as many weapons at his disposal as a Tom Brady has with the Bucs. Maybe they're not all pros yet, but they're extraordinarily young and they're fast. We're not going to see any of those guys play tonight, though. And I personally think that the Jets will win this by double digits. Their defense isn't going to start. If they do, they're going to be in for 5 minutes? And the Jets want to win. So I think this is one of those setups that just doesn't feel right at Pick'em. Any thoughts on that, Bobby?
Yeah, I'm with you there, John. I think the preseason, you're more likely out of starters to see younger players. And that's what the New York roster is loaded with as they start to rebuild. I think they had one of the best draft classes this year. Of course, time will tell. But at the moment, just projecting out to get Sauce Gardner, who I believe is just as good, if not better, than Derek Stingley, the other top corner from this class. They had Garrett Wilson to bring more speed to an offense that already had a dynamic weapon on that front in Elijah Moore. Jermaine Johnson, they go back into the end of the first round to get him. Some evaluators thought he was worthy of a pick in or just outside the top 10. So he's an edge defender with promise. Breece Hall, arguably the best running back in this class. Jeremy Ruckert, a good blocking tight end. So you're going to see these guys play tonight, and perhaps to varying degrees quite a bit. So I'm curious to see how they look. And of course, the Jets only go as far as Zach Wilson takes them. So what does he show in his first preseason outing in year 2?
I love it. Jesse, you have any thoughts on this game tonight?
I'm in full agreement with you guys. I mean, Salah, he wants to win games in the preseason, probably because he knows that might be the only chance he gets to win a few games, or that was the case last year anyways. I do remember when the Jets upset the Bengals last year. They were interviewing one of the wide receivers. I can't remember his name, but they asked him about the game, and he said, "Well, we got Mike effing White, and I'm looking forward to seeing Mike White ball out tonight." He wasn't that good in every game he played last year, but he did get some starting experience during the regular season. That one game he had against Cincinnati was a big game. And then you got a guy with a Super Bowl ring as the second stringer. I mean, the Jets, their quarterback depth looks pretty good for the preseason anyways.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think team total, if there's one to bet on over Jets, I think is where I'm going to go with the game tonight with some pizza money. But that brings us to the end of the show, guys, unfortunately. But Bobby, I appreciate your time and your knowledge, your expertise. Jesse, the same. And thanks for not badgering me today, Jesse, about
no worries.
Being, whatever, a homer, or my analytics aren't any good.
I mean, you look more like a Mets fan right now.
I know, and any friends that are watching this show locally, I'm going to hear about it. Because this is, I can say, well, I was trying to be the Denver Broncos fan, and that's not going to cut it. I made a critical error with the wardrobe, and I hope that's the worst wardrobe error I ever have.
It's more like you're going into Citi Field as a spy. It's some espionage going on.
Yeah, well, you never know. The secret's out. But anyway, thanks for your time, guys. Thanks to everybody for watching this show. We're going to be back next week on Monday. We're going to start up NFL shows. That'll be very exciting to have all these different guests that are nice enough to come on the show to provide their expertise free of charge. It's a very good thing, and hope we see you again soon. So, Jesse, you want to take us out of here?
You betcha. Everybody out there, remember, bet with your head and not over it, and may all the wins be yours.
Well done.